My
father was born in Hungary in about 1909 to his father, Rabbi Moshe Aharon Krauss, who later was known as the Rabbi Nudbanya or Bayamare.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishalem Sforom.
Sharei Hatikva, having erected a distinctive building, was growing in numbers. In 1958, its first rabbi, Sigmund Hanover, retired to Israel. The community procured a new rabbi. Rabbi Abraham Krauss would lead the shul for close to 25 years.
He grew up. Even though he was a Hungarian, he went initially to Hungarian yeshivot. My grandfather was a very interesting person. He had a very wide education, wanted him to have a broader education, even Jewishly. He sent him to Lithuania to learn in Telz. And in Telz was the place where many Jews, many young men from either from Hungary or from Germany or the rest of Europe, not necessarily Romania, came to learn.
While he was chosen primarily for his ability to orate in German, the rabbi gained popularity among the youth as well. It was the 1960s and the shul had a generation of young members with an eye to the future. The shul was decidedly a German shul, but it had some of the trappings of an American shul too. The newsletter changed its name from Mitteilungen to Kehilasenu, and the language was changed to English. A flourishing youth were making their ranks through the youth minyan on the first floor, preparing to lead the shul into a new era.
Which were there. It was a synagogue that had about 500 families. It had a very large youth group, very active youth group, and it was an important synagogue.
So much space here that when they had extra minyan upstairs in the shul, they had a separate minyan downstairs, which is the social hall, and the Ezras Nashim was in this room. They would take these panels out of the room as well as the other room, and they would daven. At the same time, the hall was used for many different functions. One of the functions that it had, that the shul needed to raise money in the 50s and 60s, and they had Hanukkah parties. And some of the performers I recall once or twice, the Amar brothers, Joe Amar and his brother, and Shlomo Kalabach was here. Believe it or not, Shlomo Kalabach was here in this shul and performing for a German jury.
My father also went, as was the mode in among many of those students, to then go and get a university degree, and he picked up a PhD from Berlin University.
Rabbi Krauss is a very interesting subject, you know.
Yeah.
We were divided about him. He was both charismatic and not very well organized.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a big following, I think, among the younger people. And the like sort of the first generation of people born after the war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, born between the baby boom, now the baby boomers.
Right.
He was very warm.
Uh-huh.
He was his, if you see the way Simcha Krauss talks,
Uh-huh.
it's like his father.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he was very diffuse, but he was very learned and cultured, and I think the young people basically loved him.
Mm.
He did have a little bit more learning, and he was a lively guy. Oh, I remember him, extremely well.
The shul also downstairs was used, which I have fond memories of, as a youth minyan. Every Shabbos morning, we would have our own minyan. Everybody from the youth, young generation of bar mitzvah age and up, would handle the minyan. We also had, once every 4 to 6 weeks, was a big treat for the youth of the shul. We would daven upstairs with the adults. Some of us would lane a parsha, and also we would give the Dvar Torah. In these rooms were also a Talmud Torah. We lost yesterday one of the Gedolim of the shul, Achava ben Yomin ben Mordechai, Zifron Levracha, who was the principal of this Talmud Torah and had maybe 100 children here.
Interesting thing was, and in that synagogue it was more outstanding, there were many kids who didn't go to yeshiva. They went to the general public school. And they, interestingly enough, remained frum, a big percentage of them. Because of the German background, many who went to public school remained in contact with the synagogue, with my father, with religiosity, and so on and so forth.
While the 1950s and 60s were the heyday of this shul, it also foresaw demographical changes in the community and in the immediate area. The vibrant community south of the bridge began to empty out as German Jews passed away, moved closer to the Breuers enclave, and the younger generation moved to suburbia. The size of the German Jewish community fell by over 50% in the 20 years between 1960 and 1980. This crisis put the future of the community and its institutions at risk. But as crises often do, it drew the members of the community closer together. And as younger members moved away, the average age of the German community became lopsided, with a visibly older constituency, a trend more pronounced in Washington Heights than in other communities of changing demographics. The more liberal Jews were quicker to leave, while those with stronger traditional ties were more likely to stay. The community became more concentrated, with many Sharei members migrating closer to Fort Tryon Park. Rabbi Krauss would remain with the shul through the mid-1970s, as the shul took on a new role as the last beacon of the brand of German Jewry that had emerged from the provincial communities of southern Germany to populate the winding streets and buildings of southern Washington Heights. Sharei would go on to absorb the members of several smaller shuls as they dwindled, and alas, Sharei Hatikva would be one of the few surviving shuls south of the bridge, carrying the legacy of those that once called this their home. The area of the community below 160th Street, which was sometimes referred to as the Fourth Reich, was beginning to empty out by the late 1950s.